Hello. Apologies firstly on branding. I realise everyone has branded their PowerPoints really well. I have already sent an apology to my director that this is not on brand. So apologies for that. Like many of you, I don't think it's been the most fruitful time across the course of the last year in terms of seeing proclamations and people saying that they love and know Jesus now. But we did, like many of you, go online. How do I turn the PowerPoint? Oh, it does. It happens. You just think it. I was like, there's nobody over there. Sorry, technology's not my strong point. You're gathering that more and more. Thank you, Andy. But we tried various things. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's a picture of Michael Otz's head on a camera screen. We fought really hard to try and make a mission happen last year. But it seemed that with restrictions always changing, it was really hard. It meant that some of the bigger CUs across Ireland were able to put on events like this, where there's a big live stream and lots of things happening. But generally, lots of smaller CUs would have found it really difficult. There weren't that many people coming along from the CU, and there weren't necessarily that many guests coming along. We did see events like this, and like many of you, we saw lots of people seemingly click on, and I have no idea for how long they clicked on for. But we did see them come along to other things as well. If we scroll on, you might see we did make attempts. Again, Michael Otz, he's doing really well here in this PowerPoint. We tried, this is probably the most complicated event I think I've ever been involved in trying to plan. Restrictions change seemingly every 5 minutes. I think at one point, Michael, you were going to come and stay with Gwen and Monty, and then the next minute then it changed and you weren't allowed to, and we had to try and find new accommodation, and the venues kept changing, and then the police got involved, and it just seemingly was so difficult to just make mission happen in person. And I think it was probably a summary of our year this was the very best that one of our biggest CUs could put on. In the fact that we managed to get something in person, we managed to book out an event, and we put on a couple of times, and Michael did a great job in coming, and there were guests that came along, but it just seemed to be really difficult to make happen. If we scroll on, as you can see, we did make an effort, kind of like you mentioned there, Julia, in terms of what you were able to stream and be able to put online. We did try to make that happen well, and we did see students really engage and go far with that. But it probably wasn't the main place that we were really looking to see mission. Whenever we went into lockdown, we were trying to redesign small groups in Ireland anyway. And so we happened to have a call lined up with Pete Dre just to teach us his ways and about things. And he introduced us to the idea of what impact groups would look like and the importance of that. And I think what we saw for this coming year was that we were going to go really, really hard on trying to make sure that we invested really, really well in small groups. Because actually we do have small groups in Ireland, but they maybe haven't been as effective, maybe people in CUs haven't been that involved in them. So we went really, really hard for a year. And actually, it bore great fruit in that sense. We saw people wanting to engage in those smaller communities, in their flats, in their courses. We saw people running little events outside. We would see small groups coming together and wanting to really focus on that. But we put a big emphasis. Sorry for the next slide. I don't know if it is. Yeah, that's a generic image. It hasn't put up the new small group booklet I was meant to put in there, but that should be a small group booklet. Apologies. I don't just have lipstick, generally. We can go back if you want, Auntie. Maybe let's go back to that one. That's better. We spent the year, one of our, he was a relay worker, he moved over, he'd become a Christian actually in Canterbury, and I basically grovelled to him to move over to Ireland, and he did spend a year doing relay, and then he spent the last 2 years really helping to develop. He's been investing, meeting with all the small group leaders he can on Zoom. He's been creating this wonderful little booklet that, as you just saw, and it's been one of these stages where we've really looked at, and it's kind of what we were saying here, laying these seeds sort of where are we hoping to be as we come out of a pandemic. We've been investing heavily in leaders, and we've been seeing this come through in the small groups, in this the ability for them to take on this leadership, this ownership of where they are, in their courses, in their flat, being able to put on events, and we've been looking to really train and equip them much, much more in what that looks like. We probably wouldn't in the same places where it might have been in UCCF, where there were already sort of things existing. So we had to kind of look a little bit further back. But actually, if you jump on a little bit past the lipstick, we then did see this real investment in leaders. And this is something that we felt was really, really important in this season. Although we were seeing some people come to events, we wanted to be really prepared for coming out the other side. And we've really tried to mark this moment as a season where we would invest and try and see change in our movement. And so whenever we could, we were booking out churches and trying to find places where we could try and gather leaders together to go really deeply. We realized that as a staff team, actually sitting online and doing lots of stuff online was really, really difficult. And so where we could, we tried to make sure we could get people together. And we're producing different resources to invest in leaders. This was a gathering just a couple of weeks ago. We're now in November. It wasn't a couple of weeks ago. But actually, we're now starting to see more and more people coming along to these events. We saw more people turn up to events in person before term in training and equipping as leaders than I think we've done in the last number of years. If you scroll on a little bit more, that was actually down in Dublin, where again, restrictions, we're working across 2 different countries in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And actually that makes it very difficult for restrictions on what we can do across the island. And actually we do see that it tends to be in the south, the CUs are much, much smaller and have maybe been much more affected by how the pandemic's gone. And so actually the investment in small groups has been twofold in that. It's worked really well in the large CUs where you've been able to filter that through and into lots of little groups in massive CUs, but also the smaller CUs feel like they've got resources and an ownership and an investment that maybe they didn't quite have before. It's great. There was something else. Oh yes, the picture that was missing was actually one of the lipstick. It's so great, isn't it? Another resource that we tried actually using this year. We had contact with a number of different groups who are involved in youth ministry across the island. And one of the things that they really noted was actually those leaving school were having a really hard time. Those who were finishing school, they were really apprehensive about the future, and those starting university had a lot of fear as well. And so what we did was we created a little booklet and a series online called Flux, and we ended up investing quite a lot in that. And actually we produced a part 1 for those leaving school and a part 2 for those starting university. And both of those, I say sold out, as in we put up for order that you could order the copies, and they're both gone. And actually we find that did a massive thing for our students and the people that we work with, whether it's scripture unions in Ireland working in schools, or whether it's those in churches looking to invest in their ministries. And we find that idea of working together with other people became much, much more prominent in our ministry. Those who are involved in different areas, wanting to see what we knew, wanting to use the resources we had and our understanding of where students were at. And so for us, that's actually been a massive thing, because what it's meant is that as we've started university, we've slightly surreally seen far more people coming along to CUs, which is turning to be a logistical nightmare in a pandemic. But actually it's been a great joy that we're seeing more people than pre-pandemic coming along to CUs. Whether those people were those that were involved in small groups over the last year and got more invested, or whether they're those who were in school and they heard about what we were doing and the investment that they would receive on coming on. Which I suppose leads us into our plans for this coming year. I've got a little bit excited, and we're going to go quite big in terms of across the island in different forms this year. We're training up our relay workers to be prepared to go and deliver talks on the topic of human across the island in lots of different little smaller contexts. They're all super excited, and so we're investing in them. We're doing kind of what you do here in small groups in Foyer, where you're giving talks and getting feedback. And we're looking to really try and invest them into being little mission teams to go to these universities that are so excited to be back in person and say, what does it look like for you to take these relay workers and to use them really well? And so that's something we're really excited about. As staff are getting excited to bring in our relay workers they're already writing and practicing their talks, which is great. And so we're quite excited to see how that happens, as we're looking to as well build an evangelism team really in Ireland of those who are ready to give evangelistic talks. But even in Belfast, one of the things we're seeing, I don't know if any of you have been to Belfast, but it's not always the most united of places. Sometimes there's division, occasionally. But actually, we've seen this real move of the Lord in this last season, where he seems to be drawing people together who wouldn't usually be connected. And so what we're going to try, for example, in Belfast, is we're going to try a Belfast City mission. We've got CUs coming across the city to come and work together. We've got Glenn Scrivener booked to come over with, I don't even know how many other different speakers, but it seems like we're in the tens now and I've lost count. But what's really exciting is the momentum that's gaining, not just with churches and with students, but actually just the wider Belfast area. People are really excited for what's coming. And actually what we're seeing is the CUs that were kind of mobilized and encouraged and sort of built up in this last season are actually coming through really, really well. And they're all quite excited for where mission's going. And that doesn't just mean thinking about mission then, it means that we're equipping and training now. And that means that everyone's just a little bit more coordinated. But if I finish with one story, I think I should pop up a little screen. I've probably just had the picture. Is there one more? it's not a story. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It's all good. What actually, it's all good. As I mentioned, one of the things we were investing in across the course of this last year, and one thing to make sure that we're really going deeply with people, we were sending uncovers to people's houses and doing uncover training. I think Nay probably did, I feel you did uncover training at some point, and we had lots of these different things going on. And what it's meant is that as people have been coming back into halls, our students have been more confident and felt more equipped than they have ever done. And so one of the students in Stranmillis College coming in, a fresher came in and they got chatting and he realized he was having a hard time. So he was like, why don't we read the Bible together? And we'll just open it up. And they started reading the Bible together and he got a call at 3 a.m. This was only 2 weeks ago. And he got a call at 3 a.m. saying, here, I think I want to become a Christian. I think I'm a believer now. And that guy who's just become a Christian, he actually came last week to uncover training happening in one of our CUs as we look to try and see other freshers invest in what does it look like to be able to read the Bible with people. And although that's not a story from lockdown as such, I think it's really prevalent of where we are. I think we took that focus away necessarily from having to force the issue whenever it wasn't really happening and saying, let's invest in those students, let's make sure that they are ready to be able to share in their courses in their flats. And we're now seeing the fruit of that, and that's really exciting. And now CUs are coming to me going, can we get some training in using Uncover? Even one of our bigger CUs next week, we're like, can you teach us everything? They've got their weekend away next weekend, and they were like, can you just get the whole of the CUI team to come and do some seminars? And I was like, this is short notice, guys, but we can see what we can do. But there's this real enthusiasm for them. They're seeing the fruit, and they now want to see more of that. I'm going to stop there now, but thank you for bearing with me on my PowerPoint.